my channel. It's Chelsea, where we talk about all things glam and all things girly. I am a beauty enthusiast that loves to talk about everything dealing with beauty and makeup, and today NATASHA DENONA has graced us with yet another launch, and I'm going to be discussing the new Mini BIBA palette along with her new Rose Cheek Duo. So I cannot wait to show you all a demonstration, my thoughts about this new collection, and of course some comparisons at the end of the video. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I truly do appreciate it. And let's get right into this video. So like I said, we have a new mini eyeshadow palette by NATASHA. This is the Mini BIBA palette, and I was very excited about this palette when I heard about it because I love BIBA, the original BIBA palette. It definitely was one of my favorite palettes of this entire year, and I was like, give me more BIBA, because that palette is just everything to me. It's a neutral lover's dream, and the formulation is impeccable. So I have very high hopes for this palette, and I also was excited about the new Rose Duo Cheek here. So we have a cream blush and then a powder highlighter. So let's get into some details of the Mini BIBA palette. This palette does retail for $25, as does all of her mini eyeshadows. We get 5 new shades. So these shades are neutral to brown with a rosy undertone. So in this particular palette, we have 3 matte shades. We have this shade here as a matte, this one as a matte, and this one as a matte. This is her cream powder eyeshadow formula, and then we have a metallic formula here that has her like metallic crystal-like formulation. And so that is the details of those. And then the Mini Cheek Duo, like I said, we have a cream blush here, and then her metallic highlighter here. This does retail for $19, and as you can see, this is a, how does she describe this shade? A warm rose shade, and then the Super Glow highlighter is a light medium highlighter. So let's get into some swatches of the eyeshadow palette, then we will get into the eye look. So starting with the shade called Bruno, this is a deep mahogany brown. Then we get into Izzy, nude dusty rose. Blaze Nude, light rosy nude. This is the metallic shade. Plush, light medium dusty coral. And then lastly, the cream powder shade is Wink, and this is a medium dusty coral. So here are the shades of the Mini BIBA palette. And then while we're here, let's just go ahead and swatch the Rose Cheek Duo, and then we'll get into the eye look. Something that I think is very interesting about this Rose Cheek Duo that I really think we should point out is that it's formulated with hyaluronic acid, which is amazing. That's going to help our skin to retain moisture and keep our skin looking hydrated. And then it's also formulated with botanical oil that is going to have antioxidant benefits. So here is the blush shade in Warm Rose. And then the highlighter shade is a light to medium highlighter shade. So this is the Rose Cheek Duo, and then the Mini BIBA here. So getting into the eye look, I first wanted to go in with the shade called Izzy, and I wanted to run that into my transition area and into the crease. This shade blended out really nicely. It did not skip. It did not feel hard to blend either. It had a very smooth blend as a matte shade, and I was really happy about that. Just no fuss, no muss. Got right in there and did what it needed to do. Then I wanted to go in with the shade called Plush, and I concentrated this into the crease, and I don't really know if I could see too much of a distinctive difference between Izzy and Plush. When I was blending Plush into the crease, I was like, I probably should have put this into the transition area and then Izzy into the crease, but I could see the actual tone of the shade, and I think it's so pretty. The next time I do an eye look with this palette, I want to put Plush, this shade, all over the eye and kind of focus on more of the matte shades, and then maybe use the metallic shade as the inner corner highlight, or just not at all, just like do a whole matte eye look. But either way, Plush definitely blended really nicely, very easily into the crease, just like the shade Izzy did. After that, I went in with Bruno. So when it's with Bruno, and started to blend that into the outer corner of the eye. And I wanted to bring that shade further into about the middle of the eye toward the lash line, and then blend it into the crease here. You see a little more shimmer on this side because I took the metallic shade, if I could say, further up. And so this area of the crease looks more shimmery than this one does, and I did not do it on purpose, so that's user error on my part. But loved how, once again, this shade blended really nicely, and I really like this tone. My eyelash is coming up. I really like this tone of the shade Bruno here. It has this, like it's described as this brown mahogany shade. So it's not just, you know, a dull brown. It's not a neutral brown. Like, we've got a little life to this color, which I really like, with that undertone of it being more mahogany. So once again, it blended really nicely. No skipping, which sometimes our deeper shades can be a little harder to work with, because especially when they are deeper and airing on more of like a purple base. I've heard time and time again, purple based eyeshadows are hard to formulate in terms of the color. It's harder to formulate the color and then to make it a smooth blend on the eye in terms of its formulation. So this shade blended out really nicely and very easily. Took that shade into the crease, and I also used it on the lower lash line. Then wanted to go in with the cream powder, and I was like, okay, we've got a cream powder in this particular palette. And I put this right here next to the shade Bruno, and initially I didn't like it. I was like, I just should not have not used this shade. But I'm glad I used it, because when the whole look came together, I was like, okay, I think I actually like this gradient of like the metallic shade and then this shade here. What is the shade called? Wink. I kind of like that. So I was like, okay, I wouldn't do it again, just because I think the shade could have been used better with the eye look that I created. Like I said, user error here. But it actually like came together and I liked it. I also took Wink and used it all across the lower lash line, and I think it's such a beautiful shade, and the formulation is quite nice too. Granted, I do need to use it again to see if it is a good cream powder, because we know in the past sometimes her cream powder formula can be quite sketchy. Sometimes it can be formulated quite nice. I feel like the cream powder definitely is probably not one of her most easiest to use cream powder formulas, because when I did put it right here, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to build this shade up. Like, I'm gonna have to go in with a couple of layers, which typically I have to do that with her cream powder formula, but I do want to use it again, maybe in a larger quantity, to see how well I can build it up. So for me, whenever I do use any of her cream powders, I've just learned it's best to start off small and build the color up to the intensity that you want, because it's easier to blend out with this formulation like that, and just kind of control how you want that shade to look on the eye. But blending it across the lower lash line, it blended really nicely. I felt like I got really good pigmentation with this particular shade right here, so I was happy with how it ended up looking on my eyes. Then I went in with the shade called Blaze Nude, and I concentrated that all over the majority of the lid. And this shade actually blended really nicely with the brush, but I could definitely tell I could have gotten more pigmentation if I would have either wet my brush or would just have gone in with my finger. Because it does have that crystal-like texture, it's going to be a shadow that works better with some type of adhesive, whether that is your finger, wetting the brush. Just, it's going to work better if it has something to grab onto. However, with me not wetting my brush or using my finger, I think we got a good amount of pigmentation from this shadow, and it worked, in my opinion, quite easy. Like, it was quite easy to work with just using a brush. So I was very happy about that. And I did actually go in with Pat McGrath Intensifies wand, and I used it on this side to see if I could get more intensity from it. And I didn't really notice too much of a difference really at all. I think this particular metallic shade, you would notice more of a difference either using your finger or completely wetting your brush, like spraying it with some type of, you know, setting spray, MAC Fix Flush, or something of that nature to get more intensity. But I think without wetting it, I got really good intensity, and I liked what I see. And then I also used that metallic shade in the inner corner of the eye. So that is the final look for the eyes, and let's get into the cheek products. So going in with the cream blush, I went in with my Sonia G detailing brush because this cream blush formula I feel works better with either a synthetic brush or a dual haired brush, and this one is a dual haired brush. So blended that onto the cheeks. I think it blended in quite nicely. The cream blush shade has a slight shimmer and sheen inside of it. Nothing that you see in terms of like specks of shimmer, but when I was blending it out onto the cheek, I could see just the sheen coming from the blush. I think it blended in quite nicely, but it is light. Like, I feel like this is a shade that I would build up, but it eventually is going to fade into my skin, and I think it's primarily because of the actual shade. The highlighter though, honey, I was not ready. I went ham on this side. As you can see, I put way too much on, but it still blended really nicely. I applied a lot less on this side of the cheek. So after I applied the highlighter on this side of the face, I went in with the smooth buffer brush from Sonia G. I didn't add any extra product onto it, and I just buffed in the highlighter. And now, as you can see, we've got highlighter on, but like in a much more non-stark and like type of way. So this formula of highlighter is so beautiful. It blends so well into the skin and just makes it really easy to use. So like, even if you apply too much, you can go in and buff that into the skin, and it buffs really nicely. I did not set my face with setting spray. I did not go over my face with any type of finishing powder because I didn't want to distort the overall look of these products. But this highlighter is so stunning and so beautiful. And like I said, quite easy to work with, especially if you were to start out with too much of the highlighter. So let me get into my final thoughts and we'll do some comparisons. Mini BIBA is a surefire hit for me, okay? The formula of the matte, excellent. Very blendable, very easy to work with. Like I said, no fuss, no muss. Like, I thoroughly enjoy this formulation of mattes. I also enjoyed that we basically get more mattes than we do shimmers. And, you know, if you would have talked to me a few years ago, I'd have been like, no, give me all the shimmers. But I like this color combination, and I feel like with this color combination, if you like shades like this, you're not gonna feel so inclined to reach for a shimmer. And I think she did so well with getting these colors together, putting them in a palette, and making this such a user-friendly, all-purpose type of palette. Like, I would most definitely reach for this palette when I am going to work, but I could most definitely reach for this palette when I'm going out, because I have that one metallic shade that can definitely like shift this look or the looks that I create whichever way I want them to go. And then I have these shades here that can give me more neutral toned looks or like more toned down looks, or, you know, looks that I can use that actually can amp up my look if I want to, or make them more smoking. I do think, I do wish we would have gotten like 2 more distinctive shades, because like I told you before, when I used these 2 shades, I couldn't tell too much of a difference between them on the actual eye. So I wish these 2 shades would have been more distinctively different. And I can't even tell you what I would have wanted one of those shades to be. But on the eyes, I don't think, at least against my complexion, I don't think we see too much of a difference in these 2 shades. But I can work with that, because when using this palette again, I just won't use them both together because there's not a need for it. I'll just reach for one or the other and then go in with the cream powder or the matte shade to do whatever it is I want it to do. But I do really like this, and I definitely can see myself reaching for this a lot. Like, I have pretty much all of her mini palettes, and I would say my most favorite of the minis is the mini nude. Like, this is my go-to mini palette from the brand. I also really like mini glam, and I like what is this one, mini gold. But this is a color story that I just would go for. Like, especially if I don't have like a particular look that I want to go for, I most definitely would reach for this one. So I can see this one eventually being my favorite mini palette. Not calling it just yet. Not doing that just yet, but I could most definitely see it being, if not my favorite, in my top 3. And then onto the mini cheek product. I think this one is nice, but it's definitely not a need. For me and my complexion, the blush shade, I probably won't reach for it too much, simply because it just looks like a flush of color on my cheeks. And then this cream formula for the blush, it's not my favorite. I think it's too stiff, and I don't think it's the easiest to work with in terms of, you know, based on the brush that you use, you're not going to get a lot of pigmentation. And I like my blush to be quite pigmented. I really want you to see it. I want to see it when I'm applying it, because blush does tend to fade so quickly. So I feel like, you know, depending on what you like for blush, if you like more of a lighter pigmentation of the blush, or one that's just, you know, it's buildable, but we're never really going to be too intense, then you might really enjoy this formulation and also this tone of blush. I like the tone of blush. I just wish it would be more pigmented and not require me to add so many layers just to get this subtle look on the cheeks. However, this highlighter though could be worth all of it. Like, the highlighter is worth the purchase of this palette, in my opinion, because it's so beautiful. I like this light medium shade because I don't think it is, you know, too stark and icy. It's not too gold. I think it's kind of right there in the middle, and I think a good amount of shades could enjoy this highlighter and get some good use for it. So I would say, you know, I wish this would have just been more pigmented, and maybe we could explore a new formula of cream blushes, because I love a good cream blush. But like, I really enjoy, I really enjoy the cream blush formula in this Bloom Blush and Glow palette. For me, this one works easier than her cream blush shade in this palette. And I know some people didn't like this one, but I felt like it's not really too emollient, but it's not as stiff, and it had a little bit more movement. And then this was quite intense as well. So I could work with this one better because we had really good intensity of color, and it was just a little easier to use, and I could work with it, build it to my liking, and be good to go. So I would say, if you don't have a highlighter like this and you feel like I really want that highlighter shade and I could definitely get good use out of the cheek duo, then I would say definitely go for it. But if you have a highlighter like this, and then you know I either don't like her cream blush formula, or like I know this isn't going to work for me, then I definitely do think this is one you could skip. But the eyeshadow palette, I could see a lot of complexions enjoying this palette for what it's serving. I do like how deep this shade Bruno is, because I think we can definitely work with smoking out some shades, adding depth to the crease. And I do think this mahogany shade, this shade Bruno, could work for a good amount of complexion. So I think as a whole, we can work with this palette, and it could definitely be worth your money. And not just because it's only $25, but because we're getting a palette with really good quality formulation. So I highly recommend the eyeshadow palette. I would say for the rose cheek, you got to make that decision as if you feel like you'll get good use out of it. I don't think this is a need, especially if you have, you know, like I said, shades like that, tones like that, and so forth. Now, getting into some comparisons, I immediately wanted to swatch the cream blush shade from her Glam Face and Eye palette, the light one. The formulation is identical for the cream blush shade. This is the shade from the Rose Cheek Duo, and then this is the shade from the light palette, the Glam Face and Eye light palette. So as you can see, there is a difference between the two, but probably on the cheeks you wouldn't notice too much of a difference. As you can see from both of these cream blushes, the pigmentation is quite light, and so it's harder to build against the skin. I'll swatch the cream shade from the deeper palette, and I do like this shade better because it's more pigmented. So I will swatch that one right up here. So you can see it better because it's a deeper shade, so it's going to show better on the skin. But formulation-wise, it's still the same. It's still this, you know, light cream formula that's not too emollient. And so on the one hand, it's like, yes, it's not too emollient, so you don't have to worry about setting it, but it's just a little hard to work with. Or not hard to work with, but you're doing a lot of building. And, you know, I don't want to do a lot of building all the time. Let's compare this highlighter shade. I immediately, once again, thought of the highlighter shade in the Glam Face and Eye palette. And the formulation is different. So this is the highlighter shade from the Glam Face and Eye palette. This is the highlighter shade from the new Rose Cheek Duo. And so this Glam Face and Eye palette, this is her Star Glow, like just high beam type of highlighter. You can see that the one from the Rose Cheek Duo is a little more toned down. It's not as intense. Let me swatch this one here. So this is the highlighter from the Glam Face and Eye palette. I mean, look at the difference between the two. We just get so much more high shine from that one than we do this highlighter from the Rose Cheek palette. And I'll just go over it again since I have more. But you can build it up because obviously, as you saw in the demonstration, we can go pretty high shine with this one. So I really like this formulation. I think it would be, like I said, it's one that's quite easy to work with because it blends really good into the skin. And in terms of tone, the two eyeshadows do have a similar tone. I would say they have a similar tone of having like a champagne base infused with like some rose gold, well, not rose gold, but like a pinky hue, if that makes sense. But the intensity of the eyeshadows are the intensity of the highlighters is what's significantly different between the two. But if you have this Glam Face and Eye light palette, I really don't think you need the Rose Cheek Duo. I really don't. Because to me, the cream blush shades are quite similar in their tones, and of course in their formulation they're the same. And then the highlighters, yes, you will have to build up this highlighter if you want it to look like this, but I think you can still get a very similar look because the two highlighters have a similar tone in their shades. So those are my thoughts on that. If you just wanted to see, you know, the deeper highlighter compared to the Rose one, let's put that one right here. And there you see, so this is the highlighter from the deep Glam Face and Eye palette, the highlighter from the Rose Cheek Duo, and then the highlighter from the light palette, Glam Face and Eye palette. So this highlighter shade this shade right here is deeper than the Rose Cheek Duo, but they could be similar. They're kind of similar too, kind of similar. So yeah, like I said, I just, you know, this kind of further proves that this little palette right here is definitely not a need. It's more so a want or a need if you don't have anything like it and you think you would enjoy it. Now for the eyeshadow, I mean, we have to just bring out BIBA, you know, because we've got a mini BIBA. Let's look at the big BIBA. So what I like is we've got Big Mama BIBA here. I mean, this palette is so worth it. Let me just put that out there, okay? Okay, Big Mama BIBA, and then we got Little BIBA right here. And so you can definitely see the inspiration of Mini BIBA from Mama BIBA. But I am very happy that she put all 5 new shades in this palette versus taking like 2 or 3 shades from BIBA and putting them in here. Like when looking at them, so for instance, let's swatch the shade Izzy from Mini BIBA. And then we're gonna swatch the shade Buff from Big Mama BIBA. And so we've got Izzy from Mini BIBA and then Buff from Big Mama BIBA. And so the shades are similar, but their undertone is different. On the eye, it might not be too much of a difference, especially when you look at the whole eye look and how you pair them together. But I think, you know, unless you're really studying the eye, these 2 shades do look quite similar. Let's swatch the metallic shade in Mini BIBA to this metallic shade or this shimmer shade Monroe. Now Monroe is not a metallic shade, it's more of a shimmer shade. So here is the metallic shade from Mini BIBA, and then this is Monroe, the shimmer shade. And looking at their tones are kind of similar. Let me see if I can have some more arm space. Metallic shade from Mini BIBA, and then we'll do the shimmer shade from Big Mama BIBA. So looking at them, the tones are kind of similar, but the formulation is quite different between the two. But the tone of them is quite similar. So she definitely did use shades from Big Mama BIBA that inspired Mini BIBA, but the shades are not identical. And then also, you know, we've got a huge price difference as well. If you don't want to spend the $129 on Big Mama BIBA, but you would love, you know, to have a similar color story, especially if you like those rosy tones that we do find in the Big BIBA palette, you would most definitely enjoy this one. When looking at the other mini palettes from Natasha, I thought about Mini Zendo, and in looking at them, you know, we definitely don't have any similarities here between the two. So if you have Mini Zendo, you're not going to repeat the shades. Even the shades that look sort of similar, they're not identical, so I'm happy about that. Then I thought about Mini Retro, and Mini Retro, in my opinion, is just all around lighter in terms of the matte shades that we would use than Mini BIBA. So in my opinion, no need to stress about repeating there. And then let's look at Mini Love. So in looking at Mini Love, I think once again, we're safe to say that we're not repeating shades in Mini BIBA as we are Mini Love. Because even, you know, there's more shimmers in this one, and just all around the tones are different. So very happy with this one. I think if you are a collector of her mini palettes, you don't have to worry about repeating shades in terms of the tones in all of your other mini palettes compared to this one. I think if you have larger BIBA, you still could very much enjoy Mini BIBA because we're having more of a concentrated color scheme here in Mini BIBA compared to the larger BIBA palette. But I also feel like if you don't want to splurge on the larger BIBA, you really can enjoy Mini BIBA and get a good feel for it. All in all, Mini BIBA is a surefire win for me. Definitely will be putting this in my constant reach for eyeshadow palette drawer. Rose Cheek, she's a little cute, but I could most definitely do without her. For me, I would probably just reach for the two shades in the Glam Face and Eye palette because, you know, if I'm already using this palette, I would just reach for these two shades. I wouldn't close this palette and then pick up this one and reach for these two shades. So those are my thoughts on these two particular products. Let me know your thoughts below. Do you think these are products that you would be interested in? Do you have them? What are your thoughts based on how the both looks came together? Leave that all in the comment section below. And if you've made it to this point in the video and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I would love for you to consider subscribing and joining the Glam Girl Squad. And guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my very next video. Bye, guys.